In Russia, a sign that frustration with Vladimir Putin and his unprovoked invasion is growing. Deputies from 18 municipal districts in Moscow and St. Petersburg have now signed a petition demanding Putin's resignation, calling his actions, quote, detrimental to Russia's and its citizens' future.
A Russian politician publicly calling for Putin to resign, as dissent in Russia appears to grow over its failures in Ukraine.
Things inside Russia are no longer merely tense. They are unstable. What we are witnessing now is not just dissatisfaction or war fatigue, but a deeper fracture spreading through the political system, the economy, and society itself. For years, the Kremlin managed to isolate the consequences of the war from everyday life. Losses were hidden, costs were deferred, reality was filtered. That buffer is now collapsing. The war has reached the kitchen table, prices have surged across the country. Basic goods that once felt mundane, fuel, food staples, medicine, have become sources of daily anxiety. Long queues at gas stations, regional fuel shortages, and disrupted logistics are no longer isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a system under strain. Public services, especially outside major cities, are visibly deteriorating. Heating failures in winter, delayed repairs, and understaffed hospitals are pushing social patience to its limits. And when patience breaks, silence ends. For the first time since the war began, criticism is no longer confined to anonymous voices online or exiles abroad. It has surfaced inside Russia's own political institutions. Municipal deputies in cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, and regional centers have openly questioned the war and the leadership behind it. These are not revolutionaries, they are system insiders, elected under the rules of the state, speaking from within its walls. In one regional assembly, a deputy openly stated that the war's objectives could not be achieved and that continuing it only deepened the country's crisis. The reaction was immediate. The microphone was cut, security intervened, criminal charges followed, but the words were already out. They had passed through the cracks in the censorship wall. That moment mattered, because it wasn't about one speech or one individual. It was about the taboo being broken. Someone inside the system said aloud what millions were thinking, that the war is failing and that responsibility cannot be endlessly deflected. This wasn't an isolated outburst. Former military commanders, retired generals, and ex-officials, figures once considered pillars of loyalty, have begun voicing unusually blunt assessments. Some have admitted that Russia entered the war unprepared. Others have criticized intelligence failures, unrealistic assumptions, and catastrophic miscalculations about Ukrainian resistance. These are not Western analysts. These are Russian insiders. One former senior commander openly acknowledged that the belief Ukraine would collapse within days was an illusion, fueled by flawed intelligence and wishful thinking. Another pointed out that the military system had become addicted to false reporting, telling superiors what they wanted to hear rather than what they needed to know. This culture of deception, they warned, hollowed out decision-making long before the first shot was fired. And this rot has consequences. On the battlefield, Russia continues to suffer heavy losses. While exact numbers are impossible to verify, Western intelligence estimates and independent researchers agree on one thing. Casualties have reached levels that place enormous strain on Russia's manpower reserves. Monthly losses increasingly outpace sustainable recruitment. This is not just a military problem, it is a demographic one. The Kremlin knows this. That is why it has avoided announcing a new full mobilization. The first wave triggered panic, flight, and social shock. Hundreds of thousands of people left the country. Many never returned. A second open mobilization risks igniting protests the state may struggle to contain. Instead, recruitment has shifted into the shadows. Contracts offered in poor regions, pressure on students, debtors, prisoners, promises of high pay and quick service quietly replace formal conscription. This patchwork approach fills gaps temporarily, but it comes at a cost. Declining training standards, broken morale, and an army increasingly composed of people who do not understand why they are fighting. Families feel this betrayal acutely. For years, soldiers' relatives were among the most loyal supporters of the leadership, believing stability had finally been achieved. Now, sons are not returning. Information is scarce. Compensation is delayed. And official explanations feel increasingly hollow. Mothers who speak out face detention. Even holding a sign with basic questions can lead to arrest. These images, elderly women surrounded by police, demanding answers about their children, have become quiet symbols of a moral rupture. When those who once trusted the state most feel deceived, the damage runs deep. At the same time, the economic foundation beneath society is cracking. Pensions have lost real value due to inflation. In some regions, payments are delayed. Social assistance funds have been redirected to cover war expenditures, creating visible gaps in welfare programs. For millions of elderly Russians, this feels like abandonment. A generation that endured hardship for decades now faces uncertainty at the very end of their lives. To compensate for mounting deficits, the state has turned to the most direct solution: raising taxes. Increases in consumption taxes may sound technical, but their impact is brutal. Every price goes up, every purchase becomes more expensive. The cost of the war is no longer abstract, it is embedded in every receipt. Business leaders have warned openly that these measures will hurt investment, accelerate inflation, and suppress growth. The state itself has begun referring to upcoming budgets as wartime budgets, an implicit admission that civilian priorities are being sacrificed. Young people see this clearly. Surveys consistently show strong opposition among younger Russians to further mobilization. They do not see this war as theirs. They see a future being stolen. After the first mobilization, a massive wave of immigration drained the country of skilled labor, students, and professionals. Those who remain now face shrinking opportunities and growing pressure. As conditions worsen, a second wave of immigration looms. Not dramatic escapes, but quiet departures. People leaving not out of protest, but exhaustion. Every departure weakens the country's future workforce and intellectual base. Meanwhile, the political response remains frozen in a different reality. State television continues to frame the war as existential, historic, and righteous. Officials invoke past victories, distant enemies, and grandiose visions. Some openly speak as if the conflict were a continuation of World War II, erasing modern Ukraine's existence entirely. Others escalate rhetoric even further, invoking nuclear threats and fantasies of marching on foreign capitals. The disconnect is staggering. An army struggling to make incremental advances is portrayed as unstoppable. Setbacks are rebranded as strategic pauses. Losses are minimized or ignored. Maps are redrawn on screen to show victories that do not exist on the ground. Independent analysts and even pro-government military bloggers have begun mocking these claims. When official statements are contradicted by publicly available battlefield data, credibility collapses. Soldiers on the front know the truth, families know it, local officials know it, and lies once exposed lose their power. This culture of false reporting, painting reality in favorable colors for superiors, has become one of the system's most dangerous weaknesses. Decisions are made based on fiction, expectations are detached from capability, and when fantasy meets reality, reality always wins. As winter deepens, internal pressure grows. Power outages, heating failures, and infrastructure breakdowns have become routine in some regions. Municipal services struggle to cope. In smaller cities and towns, residents are forced to improvise, clearing snow themselves, repairing pipes with their own money, pushing broken vehicles through icy streets. These are not political protests yet, they are survival protests. And historically, these are far more dangerous to regimes than ideological opposition. When people protest over bread, heat, and safety, repression becomes harder. Fear loses effectiveness when daily life itself becomes intolerable. Regional authorities find themselves trapped between Moscow's demands and local anger. Orders to cut costs, raise taxes, and meet quotas collide with communities already at the breaking point. Compliance weakens, quiet resistance grows. At the elite level, unease spreads. Wealth thrives on predictability, and predictability is gone. Sanctions, instability, and strategic failures erode confidence. When the state cannot guarantee security or continuity, loyalty becomes transactional, and transactions fail under uncertainty. Putin has survived crises before. He understands repression, he understands propaganda, he understands co-optation. These remain his primary tools. Crackdowns will intensify, laws will tighten, surveillance will expand. The goal is to rebuild fear faster than dissent spreads. But repression has diminishing returns. Propaganda, too, faces limits. When lived experience contradicts television narratives every day, belief erodes. When prices rise and pensions shrink, no amount of rhetoric can fully compensate. Bribery and benefits may placate some groups temporarily, but resources are finite, and war consumes them faster than they can be replenished. This is the dilemma facing the Kremlin now. The social contract that sustained the system for 2 decades was simple: stability in exchange for obedience. That contract is broken. Stability is gone. Chaos, uncertainty, and sacrifice have replaced it. What remains is force. The question is whether force alone can hold a country together when trust has collapsed, the economy strains, and the future feels closed. History offers warnings, not guarantees. Russia has entered a dangerous phase where internal pressure, external conflict, and institutional decay reinforce one another. Not collapse tomorrow, not revolution overnight, but a slow, grinding erosion that is far harder to stop than to ignore. The war was meant to secure the state. Instead, it has exposed its weakest foundations, and once those foundations crack, the damage rarely stays contained. So the real question is no longer how long the war will last. The real question is whether the system that started it can survive its consequences.